we have all our panelists here, and we have about 20 guests. So thank you for joining us this morning in this virtual space. We welcome you all. Nisambulo Vinaka, welcome to this virtual space. My name is Salo Tisongo, and I'm the Director of Advocacy with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. We advance human rights and social justice around the world, partnering with those who confront unjust power structures and mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. Our work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity. And I have the honor of moderating this panel of esteemed leaders from around the world who show us what that looks like on the ground. The title of this event is Seeking Justice and Remedy for Communities Facing Climate-Forced Displacement. And you'll hear from these leaders about their homes, how they're using the utility of the United Nations to seek justice and remedy, and why. And then we'll hear from the newly appointed UN Special Rapporteur on the protection and promotion of human rights in the context of climate change, before we open it up for Q&A. UUSC and our partners are holding 3 events today and tomorrow on the margins of the UN General Assembly and the New York City Climate Week around the theme of home and justice, lifting up the work and dedication of UUSC's partners who, despite the political, socioeconomic, and moral crisis that have caused their vulnerability, their commitment for justice for not only their current generations, but for those who have passed and those who are yet to be born, remain steadfast. So to get us started, I'd like to now invite our leaders, our panelists, to introduce themselves and to tell us about their homes. Hemafathi, I'd like to start with you. Please go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience and tell us about your home and what impacts you're facing on the ground.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy to be, the young one as a part of this extremely esteemed panel. My name is Hemavati. I'm from India. I'm a member of the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition at the moment. I'm also a PhD scholar. I'm a lawyer by training. And I also currently teach environment law and policy for master's students who study climate science and policy. For me, I think, especially since I started having conversations internationally with people across the world about climate change, I developed a sense of pride as to how our country, with this immense amount of diversity, is continuing to survive despite all the differences we have that comes by because of this diversity. And we are doing a great job with all the difficulties we face because of our population, the fact that we are a developing country, and we have a lot of people who live in poverty, no access to food, water. But I don't think India as a country has given up hope. We continue to stay hopeful. We continue to contribute to international conversations. I think because of the conversation, especially after the conversations, I've been having at the International Forum. But unfortunately, India is also one of these countries that are, high on the list that is threatened by climate change itself. It is not just because of the diversity in terms of human beings, but it is also because of our diversity. We have the Himalayas in the north, we have a desert on the west, and then we have the Indian Ocean on the south. And, it creates a very unique environment. And we have a lot of people, say, living in the coastal line because we have a very long coastline. And a lot of people are threatened by climate change because of this. If you calculate the number of people who are actually impacted by climate change in India, it might as well be the population of 10 countries elsewhere in the world, right? So, we face difficulties. We're working on solutions, but I think as a world, especially, including India and other developing countries, we are failing heavily on trying to achieve equitable climate justice because of the negotiations that are happening and because of the failed promises that has been, promises actually have been made way back since 1994. And where are we now? Have we made any progress? So that is a very disappointing thing, not just for India, but for all developing countries and underdeveloped countries. And just emphasizing on the fact that how we are failing equitable climate justice in this particular scenario. And right now we are moving towards, climate change is forcing people to move. And internally, a lot of people are moving within India. And we are also having a lot of people coming in from, say, Pakistan and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and, a lot of other Asian countries coming into India uh, to stay safe from the difficulties they're facing within their own country. So displacement has become a very huge climate justice issues. Uh, but we don't have the resources, we don't have the money to deal with all of this. And the international community is not really giving us the adequate amount of help. I'm not going to say no help at all, but the adequate amount of help that is necessary for us to be able to respond to the crisis is not present at the moment. And for me, it's about, if you want to save a country as unique as India, we got to put all in, be all into the solutions and be all in with our passion to come up with solutions that are necessary, not just to protect human beings, but also to protect Mother Earth itself. And India has a population, which is about 17% of the entire world's population. And we have 54% of our population is also people below the age of 40, and slightly less than number below the age of 35, whom we consider youth, who are going to be people implementing solutions that the leaders are going to take up now. So I think to make progress, I believe India can be also a force of change just as much as any developed country. And I take pride in the conversations we are having within India, but I feel to ensure just more, adequate and necessary assistance from the international community so that we can protect ourselves and the environment as well. So I'll stop there.
Naka Hemafati, thank you so much for sharing with us your home and for affirming and reminding us that India has not given up hope, and also for calling out the failure of developed countries to advance equity and climate justice. Solomon, I'd like to pass it on to you next. Please introduce yourself for the audience and describe your home in the Solomon Islands and in the Pacific.
Naka Vakalevu, Salote, and thank you, Hemavathi, for your first intervention, taking the floor first. Pleased and honored to be here with all of you. And just to quickly introduce my name is Solomon Yo, and I'm a climate campaigner from the South Pacific country, a next door neighbor to Salote's country of Fiji, of Solomon Islands. And what the question is, what do I love about my home? I am very tempted to say betel nut, but for the sake of everyone's appetite, I'll just stick to one of my fondest nostalgias that I have growing up in the islands. So whilst growing up in my childhood, spending most of my times in numerous communities in the Solomon Islands, I often see our grandmothers, our mothers, aunties, or even our sisters would often sweep and piling up little grasses and fallen leaves, and sometimes dead bamboos, and then they will burn them. And it produced this really rich scent of wood and grass and combination of that. And that often gives, whenever I smell that scent anywhere in the world, it reminds me of the fondest memories I have in the childhood, spending most of my time running through the woods or over the rocks in the beach, or swimming or climbing coconuts and swimming in the pristine waters of the Pacific Ocean, and often in the rain as well. I mean, having those memories tattooed in my brain, it is now very painful to be seeing how our environments and people's well-being have been affected over the years due to the adverse effects of climate change. And my understanding in the context of, is that end of the question, or we're going to talk about also the impacts of climate change?
Go ahead, Norman. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So yes, in my understanding, understanding towards climate-forced migration is that it's often triggered by sudden onset events, such as cyclones and flooding in the context of the Pacific, and also slow onset events such as sea level rise and coastal erosion. Both triggers are very visible in the Solomon Islands, and I believe so elsewhere in the Pacific. And I have two examples to give about this. So first is really the 2014 April floods, as we call it. This is by far the worst recorded floods we have in the country. It has caused by torrential rain from a cyclone called Cyclone Eta in 2014, and it has affected over 52,000 people in Solomon Islands and claimed almost 22 lives and displaced almost 10,000 people, causing so much destruction towards agricultural lands and causing extensive economic loss, estimated at almost 100+ million US dollars, with a country as a developing country that's, to many countries, that might seem like very minimal, but or marginal. But for Solomon Islands, there's a huge amount of a country's GDP. This was, of course, 92% of our GDP, and more shocking is the devastation that has caused to the housing, which account for almost 56%, I believe, were really damage was sustained to homes, and so many people were displaced because their homes were lost. And most of this displacement people are coming from informal settlements in the cities, or mostly in the urban areas, where displaced people, refugees, had to seek in almost 30 evacuation centers that are set, like it's just informal evacuation centers that were sent throughout the capital of Honiara. But over like 2 months, you can see 4,000 people still remaining in these shelters, as they're coming from very disadvantaged communities. They are facing a lot of difficulties in, rebuilding their homes, as in informal settlements is, of course, people are quite marginalized as well. So it has been very challenging. In terms of the slow onset, you recall in 2019, there were 25 families in a small island in Choiseul province who made a decision to relocate. So although they can see that the pressure is mounting and mounting, and they had no choice but to move, they of course choose to move, take the safe way and then move away, because it was really hard to live on the islets that they were living at. So furthermore, you can also see that the rate of the sea level rise we're facing in Solomon Islands is amongst the global highest, with estimated 8 to 10 millimeters annually. As we know, every millimeter it counts. It is catastrophic if 1 millimeter rise, especially to island nations in the Pacific. And at this rate, communities will face more inundations of their lands, as well as saltwater intrusion in the water sources as well. And you can see the combination of declining coral reefs as well, which provides one of the main buffers to storm surges that continues to eat away at our coast. And you can see sea level rise continue to multiply the risk of flooding, erosion, inundations, saltwater intrusion that pose severe constraint of all of our resources, and especially our human habitability. Solomon Islands is very unique because we have almost 91% of our population residing within 5 kilometers from the coast. And we are one of the countries in the region where we have a very rapid population growth, and also the urban rate growth as well. And although I'm raising a little bit of alarm bells here, I would not only stop there, but to also see that this problem, not only that this is a problem for us, but this is also a great opportunity for especially young people who will inherit our countries and our region going forward into the future, to challenge itself really, and to orient ourselves to think about how and what can we do to support our communities in their pursuit towards a safe and dignified life. So yeah, that's just my contribution. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas Solomon. Thank you so much for sharing with us about what you love about your home, for sharing with us that scent of the Pacific. I'm sure all of our panelists have fond memories of unique scents from their homes. So it definitely brought me back home. Also, thank you for sharing how the climate crisis is affecting the Solomon Islands and how sea level rise and coastal erosion is affecting the habitability of the islands and the human rights of the people of the Solomons. Chief Sherelle, may I invite you to introduce yourself and share with us something about your home?
Hi, good morning, everyone, and bon matin in our language here. I am Elder Chief Sherelle. I am the former active chief of my tribe, the Grand Kaidulak Band of Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw, here in coastal Louisiana. It really touches me when, joining with others from around our precious Mother Earth and hearing of how we come from so many different regions, and our regions are so diverse. However, we're experiencing many of the same challenges. Our people have always been an adapting people because we understand that we need to live in synchronicity with Mother Earth and the environments that we call our homelands. And we know that, our planet goes through changes and she knows her purpose, right? So our people for many, many generations have really paid attention to her changes and have found a way to live with her rather than living against her. However, many of the things that have been done in our areas without our inclusion, without our input for traditional ecological knowledge, have caused many challenges in our area. We are facing, of course, coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion, sinkage. We are facing increasing hurricanes, and not just a number of storms, but in the severity of the storms. More recently, Hurricane Ida directly hit our areas, and the amount of damage that we've seen was catastrophic. Many people lost their homes, myself included. We are thankful that one of the things that was done was the Morganza to the Gulf levee system. That was some innovation to try to protect the communities from storm surge, and it did function. However, that's something that needs to be very closely monitored and maintained, because if it's not, then a storm like Ida that would come into this community and damage that Morganza levee system would bring catastrophic flooding into the area. However, Ida brought wind, and that is not something that we were very familiar with. And the reason why the damage was so severe is because as we lose land, we lose the things that protect us, right? And those storms come closer and closer to the inhabitants in our homelands. And this is something that we realize that we're going to continue to see if nothing is done. These things are going to grow in severity, and it's not just going to impact us, it's going to impact others all over the world. And we have this understanding. So a lot of what we've been working on in partnership with different groups like Lowlander Center, First Peoples Conservation Council of Louisiana, UUSC, is addressing these challenges and making sure that we're sharing the information based on the things that we're dealing with in our own areas, so that we can assist others in finding creative ways to address the challenges in their areas as well. It's, as others have said, it's in our diversity that we are going to come up with ways to remedy these challenges that we are facing. It's going to take all of us. It really will. and our faith is in our youth. We have seriously overburdened our youth. What we need to be doing as, elders in our communities is building, right? And creating progress so that we can hand these things to our younger generations as tools and have them carry that forward. But that has not been what we have done. Many of us have been very irresponsible, in our daily lives. And rather than protecting and preserving our planet and our areas that we are supposed to be stewards of, we have simply taken, right? Without the sense of we are all dependent upon each other for our survival, right? Without nature, there is no us. And that is majorly what our work is involved in as of late, along with addressing the challenges that we face for our right to self-determination. We are indigenous communities. We are tribal peoples. However, without specific forms of recognition, whether that be state recognition as a tribe or federal acknowledgement as a tribe, and those processes can be very daunting and quite painful to have to go through. Our community has been going through the federal acknowledgement process for 26 years. However, if you do not have those stamps of recognition that confirm your identity by outsiders, then they use that to prevent you from accessing resources that are desperately needed by your community for projects that can mitigate a lot of the damage and a lot of the challenges that we face. So our challenges are multifaceted, and it requires steady work to address these things. And, my biggest memory as a child is my sense of community, right? We were all together, and I can remember playing in the woods as a child. Everything we ever needed was provided for us. There was no need to really leave our community or our homelands to go outside because we were so cared for. And that's something that I personally have tried very hard to provide to my own children and my future grandchildren as well. But it has been very challenging. So we're very, very thankful to be joining with others that recognize the challenges and are willing to work together for the greater good of our planet and our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Sherelle. Thank you for sharing with us the memory of your home and also the impacts that your home is experiencing, the multiple and cascading impacts of hurricanes and rising seas, and for affirming what Hema Fathi shared about the impact of our diversity in addressing these issues collectively, that we depend on each other for our survival, and that without our earth, there is no us. Elder Rosina, I'd like to invite you to go next to introduce yourself and share with us about your home.
Thank you very much. I am Atakapa Ishak Shiwasha from the Grand Bayou Village in Louisiana. My name is Rosina, and I serve as a council elder to my tribe. My most important title is grandmother, because we live today and we work for the future. So that I have grandchildren is very important to me, and I love them dearly, as we do all our children. Grand Bayou Village, we are indigenous to the Louisiana region, the coastal region. We have lived here for centuries, long before many of the people occupying spaces here with us have colonized the area. And, it was paradise. It's the way that many of our people, phrase life here. Yes, there were challenges of living, on the coast with storms, whatever, but there was land and everything that we needed to protect, our lives here and to continue to live here. And there are several things that have impacted us negatively First of all, we live on a delta. My community is water access only still today. But when the newcomers came here and their response to the flooding river that created the delta, sustained the delta and nourished it, was to levee the river. And so since then, the delta has begun to die. And human footprint of oil and gas activity in our region has exacerbated the rate of loss because the river was no longer replenishing the sediment. So with the combination of the lack of replenishing sediment to the land loss, and we have climate change, and we see here on the coast, the evidences of climate change with the amount of water that we have, and so with subsidence and erosion and with the amount of water coming, to our shores, we're finding that, a lot of land is accelerating and washing away because of that. And we know that the water, we're having to find ways to live with more water as we continue to maintain a presence here. Because as Chief Sherrill so eloquently said it, we do not live in these spaces alone. There are so many other life forms here that make our human lives possible. And as stewards, given that obligation by the Creator, we have to do, the work to maintain a presence, to protect life, to share, our knowledges with anyone that wants to continue to work towards the protection and of these environments and these spaces that we live in. And so, my home, like I said, it's water access only, and it's still today, in spite of the negatives we face, with the land washing away, with the more water in the system, with the heat, because here in Louisiana on the coast, there's a lot of industrialization. We see a lot of resources taken out of the region, returned to us in those forms, industrial projects, rather than promoting, the communities, the long-lived communities here. All the resources seems to go to that endeavor, and the long-lived communities in this region, at best, get a curiosity glance, to our lives and the impacts, the negative impacts to our lives. But we maintain a presence here because we still see the viability, the things that are still here with us. We still see the flora, the fauna, the other life forms that need our voices. We need to, to share with, those who would listen to what we have to say. We need to let them know that there are things here that once lost will never be able to regain, and that we do not want to lament those losses. So we're using our life force and our energies, and we're joining, with UUSC and other organizations in order to have a platform to, I guess, to share our truths and hopefully to wake up, some people that are asleep on the fence, and spur them into action before, it's too late. So with that, I would say thank you for the invitation to be here and to participate. And I look forward to sharing more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elder Rosina, for sharing your paradise of Grand Bayou Village with us, and for sharing the impacts you're experiencing due to the climate crisis, the lack of sediments and rising seas that are causing erosion and subsidence and that are accelerating the loss of lands. And thank you also for acknowledging our non-human relatives and the need for their protection as well. So thank you all panelists for sharing with us a piece of your homes and describing the impacts of the climate crisis and climate forced displacement on your communities, Chief Sherelle shared about the power of bringing different communities together and affirming our shared experiences. And we're so glad to be providing this platform where we can do exactly that. And we also want to acknowledge what all of our panelists shared about, despite where you come from on this earth, we all have something we love about our homes. Some, as Elder Rosina shared, once we lose, we cannot regain. And when we do lose that, we grieve and long for it. So I'll now move on to the second part of our discussions about how these leaders are using the utility of the United Nations to seek justice and remedy for the harms of the climate crisis on their communities, and why, and what you want leaders at the United Nations General Assembly to do about it. Elder Rosina and Elder Sherelle, I'd like to start with you first. We understand that your tribes, along with 3 other tribes in the United States, wrote to the UN Special Rapporteur on internally displaced peoples and 9 other UN special procedures to seek an investigation in the human rights issues your communities are facing due to the climate crisis and the failure of the United States government to protect your rights. Elder Sherelle, can you tell us why your tribe decided to join this complaint?
Yes, thank you, Salote. Well, first and foremost, our people have been experiencing attempted genocide, right, since settlers arrived. And another thing that many, I guess, have chosen to forget is that our people are still under active treaty, the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, which has never been honored, but of no surprise, because many treaties have never been honored, right? But we definitely realized that it was important to speak out and to start sharing our truths so that we could protect and preserve our lives, and the lives of all of our non-human brothers and sisters as well. Our right to self-determination has repeatedly been under attack. And even though we have gone through multiple processes, their processes, to validate our existence as a tribal people, those processes change in the middle of us trying to achieve what they say that we must achieve before we can access resources. So the challenges have not stopped and there's been no resolve. And we are of the realization if nothing is done, that if we remain silent, we will surely die. And that does not stop with us, right? It will spread. And that's something that we do not want, right? And in joining in the UN complaint, we also found that all the way down here in Louisiana, while we were facing challenges, our relatives up in Alaska were facing a lot of the same challenges as we are. And there is strength in unity, right? So it was important that we all joined together to address this very real challenge to our livelihoods. And we are thankful for the opportunity to bring those things to light and to share our truth so that prayerfully we can get some resolve.
If we remain silent, we will surely die. Thank you so much, Chief Sherelle. Elder Rosina, what do you need from world leaders, including the United States, who are gathered at the UN General Assembly this week?
Well, we signed on to the complaint because as an Indigenous person in an Indigenous community, we are the first people of the land, and yet still we find in 2022, soon to be 2023, we are still the last to be considered or consulted. So when will that stop? We have used our energies, our voices, our resources, many of our people who have advocated for change, for the policies and the laws and the practices that this country embraces, change that would be inclusive, change that would be transparent. And yet they have gone to, their reward, to the afterlife, and have not seen those changes. So we have to continue to work the work. And we joined the complaint so that our future generations will not have to face the same damaging policies and practices of exclusion, of discrimination, of disenfranchisement, of dispossession. All of these things continue today. And we need to have our voice echo beyond the parameters of confinement of this country. So if we can have the platform where we can let the truth, speak our truth, and let the rest of the world know what's happening here, we're hoping that in partnership and in solidarity, we can make some changes that will not only affect our today's, but will impact the tomorrow's, as far as being progressive, positive, and healing. So many things that have happened, and Chief Sherrill said, so many of the genocidal practices that have been committed against the indigenous people here in the America. And that needs to end, that needs to stop. We need to move forward, looking for the future where we recognize our humanity, where compassion does not, depend on, your cultural status, or as some people, your racial biases. So that's why we're hoping, that the truth that we speak about our lives here, our ongoing contributions to this land, and even to the other people that have joined us here in our homeland, for us to be able to work together, to come together, to do the work that's necessary for all of us, and to recognize our humanity, because it's like the creator of all created all of us, not to discriminate or to exclude others, but to work together for the betterment of all. So that's why we joined the complaint.
Thank you so much, Elder Rosina and Chief Sherrill, for sharing with us the reason you joined the complaint, and to also draw for us the intersections of race and the climate crisis, and the historical impacts that your tribes have experienced and continue to experience today through genocidal practices and policies. Hemafathy, I understand that you're also using the UN special procedures. Can you share with us about this, why you're using the UN special procedures, and what you and your communities need from leaders at the UN General Assembly this week?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think I'll firstly just mention about intergenerational equity and the conversations surrounding it for the youth, and maybe reflect on a very old Greek proverb which says a society grows great when the elders plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in, right? That's the kind of vision we want. Like when we speak about solutions and when we speak about actions, it's not about us expecting this seedling to just grow into a tree the next day and they get it down, they have a resolution, but it is also about the generations who come after them, right? So it is in this context, I think very early on, I think in June this year, we had made a submission to the Special Rapporteur, Mr. Ian Fry, on the promotion and protection of human rights in the context of climate change, specifically for loss and damage. And we wrote this with an understanding. This was both youth from developed countries and developing countries who came together to write the submission. And we understand that, at least our conversations, it helped us understand how different we are in terms of how we see our futures and what's going to happen. Like at least with us, the folks from developed countries had some sort of hope as to human survival, whereas the ones from developing countries did not absolutely have any hope. And we thought it would be great for us to share this through a submission to the Special Rapporteur itself, and reflect on intergenerational equity as a concept, because we're all young people, and we don't have a seat at the decision-making table, but it is our futures that people are going to be deciding about. Everybody in the UN, when you set goals, especially for climate change, everybody is setting goals for 2050, 2060, 2070. How many, frankly speaking, how many of these adults do you think are going to be alive enough to implement or push forward these conversations at that moment, right? So in that particular case, we need to be involved, because this is ultimately our future as well. But people dismiss us because we are young people. We don't have experience. We don't have knowledge. No, we've been you can see a lot of young people volunteering, especially at the UN procedures. If you compare ourselves with previous year generations, young people used to go to the university, come back home, relax, enjoy. But now young people go to the university, come back and volunteer for a cause, because that's what the society has come down to. We're investing our futures, our time into causes that are actually very important to us. We are enlightened, we are knowledgeable about, okay, experience, we need guidance. We're not going to claim that we are experts, but then starting off with this, just something as small as this submission, and the fact that our submission was published on the Special Rapporteur's website, that acknowledgement felt really great for us. Stating that, okay, they're going to hear what we have to say, and they're giving us an opportunity to voice our concerns, and a platform for our voices to be heard. And I really would like to acknowledge a great feat that happened very recently, is the establishment of the youth office with at the UN itself, so that young people can be involved in the intergovernmental procedures soon. So I'll just bring this down to the intergenerational equity and justice and this principle, because I want to share this as a young person, and and I feel the conversations are still continue to move around an anthropocentric approach at the UN level as well. I'll probably just take a minute to share a story about inherent human qualities itself. And so what happens in this story is that, there are two monks who are at, beachside, and then a scorpion comes and bites one of the monks, and he continues to move ahead after, taking off the scorpion away. And then again, the same scorpion comes further ahead. When he stops, the same scorpion comes and bites him again. And then he just shoos it away and he moves forward. And, the story basically ultimately, the other monk asked that about, why did you not do anything or kill the scorpion or, do something about it? Because this was a monk. And the monk said that, humans by inherently are part of nature, and we don't have that language of killing something or disturbing something or being having negative responses to something itself. However, in terms of animals, it's the nature of the scorpion to bite, right? It's very inherent. So we are responding to the climate crisis not as human beings at all at the moment, despite the fact that we are supreme beings in the ecosystem. We're always looking at rights, but we fail to look at our duties as human beings towards Mother Earth or any other, living being in the ecosystem. And young people are recognizing this, there are new movements that are coming around, rights for nature movement, or even a subset, rights of rivers. We look at aspects of nature as living beings themselves, and this is not something new. This is what we have been practicing over generations, right? And young people are recognizing them and now, and then we're going back to what we initially practiced with nature. But to a great extent, I feel the UN fails to recognize we still see human beings at that central aspect of the ecosystem and Mother Earth itself, as if we are above everything. No, we are not. And we need to shift away from that narrative. And since you already have a lot of young people who realize that, who are already taking action, I would look at it this way, two kinds of action. Firstly, look for like an ecocentric approach. Of course, conversations are happening to push towards it, but we are still, why do we want to deal with the climate crisis? Why do you want to address loss and damage? It's so that human beings are safe, human beings develop, human beings, have access to food and water. But I don't see animals and plants a part of this conversation. No, I don't see forests a part of this conversation. I don't see rivers a part of this conversation. And I think this needs to happen at the UN level, recognition of entities of nature just on par with human beings themselves. We shouldn't be protecting environment because it's good for human beings. We should be protecting environment because it should be protected. It deserves to be protected, and we're just a part of it. And it is equally important, while we make this transition, is to bring in young people and people who are actually being impacted by climate change at a very young age. We have children understanding what cyclones are. For us, hurricanes are, we saw the beauty of nature, and we are depriving this opportunity to all the future generations about, to see how beautiful our planet is, right? All the young people now probably just would hear about heat waves or wildfires in another country, floods in another country. They've never seen the beauty of what Mother Earth is. So I think getting young people more involved in the conversations that the UN is having, and ensuring that they actually hear to us. And we use this word youth washing. Just use young people saying we're going to be inclusive, and then people are going to have us at the last 10-20 minutes of the session. Usually this is what happens. And as you see processes, a session always extends. So the 10 to 20 minutes comes down to 1 to 2 minutes, and they'll be like, let's hear from the youth, we are being more inclusive. No, we don't want that. Hear us out properly. We have something to say, because my future is more at stake than yours. So I think I'll look for higher level of not just youth inclusion, but youth empowerment, and actually hearing the UN, hearing what we have to say about the climate crisis. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Hemafathy, for reminding us of our duty to Mother Earth, to care and look out for her, which Chief Sherelle and Elder Rosina also affirmed in their roles as Indigenous women, as Indigenous peoples. You mentioned the principles of intergenerational equity and justice, and shared that young people don't have a seat at the table, similar also to what Elder Rosina shared about their tribe not being consulted or considered. And lastly, you mentioned feeling good about the acknowledgement that came with submitting the complaint. And I want to acknowledge how powerful and inspiring it is for all of us here today. Congratulations. Youths have something to say, as Hemafathy have shared. They are done with being tokenized. So let's all support that. And finally, Solomon, you're seeking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. Why are you doing this, and what is needed from our global leaders at the General Assembly this week?
Nakasalote, and thank you everyone for your invaluable contributions so far. Just adding to the discussion here, I would just like to reflect back at law school in 2000, doing my studies back in law school at the University of South Pacific. It was back in 2018 when I managed to complete a research on climate-induced displacement as my final public international law assignment. during my research, I discovered what was very deeply concerning, but also a turning point for me as a scholar and a concerned citizens of the Pacific. First was the science. Among many other concerning things in the report, the IPCC global warming on 1.5 really predicted something that was really stands out most to me, was the coral reefs would really decline by 70 to 90% with the global warming of 1.5 Celsius. So we can always hear like, oh, 1.5 degrees to stay alive. But this is something, it has become a slogan these days, but 1.5 degrees in the Pacific would mean acknowledgement of the significant loss and damage that would have to be done, that will take place, including as the coral reefs will decline, but among many other things. And of course, it does not allow us to thrive. So it will allow us to survive, but not to thrive. So this is the sacrifice the Pacific is paying for the problem that is not the ones that have been directly contributing to in the first place. Also to be aware of, as I've mentioned earlier, coral reefs really are the greatest buffer that we have towards our islands. And without them, we would face an acceleration of the decline of our islands, coastal areas to be precise. And also the fact that we depend so much on a protein on the ocean. And of course, this coral reefs produces most of them. That takes that away from all of the people in the islands. You can also face a lot of issue around food security, but those are just some examples that I can mention. The second is that what I found out was the gaps and complications in international law, and especially as well as the arrangements of protection of people or persons who are displaced by climate change. There exists no international treaty that encapsulates this geopolitical problem that we're facing. And also even the existing treaty that we have, such as the Refugee Convention, is very complicated and complex to take into account another set of class of people displaced by, in this case, displaced by natural factors. And third, although now in the Pacific, we now have arrangement to create regional frameworks and relocation policies, we are a bit behind of the problem. We should have addressed it a long time ago, putting all these efforts, but of course, understanding a lot of barriers that Pacific Island countries have to endure as well. This has been a bit in the back end, but now it's starting to take place. I only wish that it was happened sooner. And fourth, under no circumstances would the Pacific, as well as many countries, especially in the global south, would be able to finance this colossal nightmare of a logistical nightmare of relocating and facilitating climate displaced people from the escalating and intensifying adverse effects of climate change we are now facing globally. And to me, I can see, and of course, this is many people also think this way, is that this will be the greatest human rights challenge the world is already facing as well, and will face far into the future. And finally, because the glacial pace of the climate change regime is progressing, we are now seeing the climate crisis becoming a human rights crisis. It also has deep cross-cutting effects, where it has exacerbating effects to pre-existing human rights violations, and more importantly, is impeding global efforts to protect, promote, and fulfill human rights around. So understanding all these complications, what are we doing for us, as we look to ourselves as young students in the Pacific who are really concerned about the Pacific and wanting to do something better, so that not only our future is secured, but the future of our future generations is also secured. So having thought carefully in 2019, in our final year of law school, together with my classmate, we spearheaded a campaign to seek a United Nations General Assembly resolution to request the International Court of Justice to give an advisory opinion on climate change. Although we see that it's not a silver bullet, but we envision that it will be a great catalyzer to bring about more ambitious climate action. Just to give one of the many examples of what an advisory opinion would benefit, and just to clarify first that what we're trying to do is not trying to point fingers in countries, but what we're trying and suing other countries as. When you hear courts, you hear litigation or contentious cases, but no. What we're trying to seek here is an important function of the ICJ, which is advisory opinions. And key roles of advisory opinions is to developing and clarifying international law. So at this age, we do not know countries, although we have the agreements in the Paris Agreement, but there's other international arrangements out there, especially the human rights arrangements and obligations that states need to adhere to ensure that human rights in their citizens, as well as citizens abroad, are protected from the adverse effects of climate change. So seeking an advisory opinion from the ICJ and we see the ICJ as the only global judicial body that can hear evidence of law and fact on a great range of critical, important legal issues that are now impacted by climate change, and ultimately providing an opinion integrating a consideration from all of them. So you can see human rights and climate change is still, although there have been pronouncements, there have been arguments, there have been cases, reports that there's a nexus between climate change and human rights. It has not been solidified yet well in court systems around the world, and of course, and acknowledged by government, some or many governments around the world, as it implies an obligation, which is not necessarily a bad thing, which is something that we really, really need right now. So governments and other duty bearers have to protect the rights of the current and future generation from the adverse effects of climate change. So when a positive advisory opinion an outcome of a positive advisory opinion would then in turn enhance the effectiveness of international legal system in tackling climate change. For example, it can bolster the authority of human rights bodies to address climate change under their respective magnets. And in the context of climate displacement, this would significantly improve efforts to rights-based approach to climate change, enable more mobilization of resources so that it ensures it reaches the people who desperately are needing it, to ensure that they can fend for themselves, as well as create a more stable environment and secure the socioeconomic development as well, and not just on communities and people, but also a nation as well, such as for us in the Pacific, we're extremely struggling to even meet our national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement, because we face cyclones annually that continues to deprive us from half of our GDP or even more of our GDP. And this trend, we cannot really fend for ourselves and look after ourselves and ensure that we meet all of these targets as well, whilst also have to bear with our development goals, as well as the protection of our citizens from the adverse effects of climate change. And another thing, in the interest of young people, it will be able to operationalize in the principle of intergenerational equity, which is indeed the strongest interest of young people, who are the greatest stakeholders to both the climate crisis and the ICJO campaign. And finally, is that it can better integrating customary international principles into the Paris Agreement, which would be a significant benefit, because an eminent expert, I believe, have highlighted that a successful advisory opinion will help fill gaps in the Paris Agreement that are continuously proving to stymie progress. So these precise gaps are, you're looking at the gaps of ambition, gaps of accountability, gaps of equity and fairness. So having assistance of the ICJ to clarify additional obligations to the Paris Agreement, not in an attempt to undermine the Paris Agreement, as we do believe that state negotiation through the UNFCCC is the way to go forward in addressing climate change. What we're trying to do is to reinforce that, and by reinforcing, to accelerate the pace, because that's what we really need right now when we're looking down the barrel of the gun towards which will ultimately be the reason for our extinction. So why is the Pacific and civil society from the Pacific as well doing all of this and have a strong interest in this campaign? Is because it comes down to the ultimate intention for us to the membership of the United Nations General Assembly, because our membership gives us political power. Yes, we're small island nations. We don't have the military, we don't have the economic power, we don't have the resources as much as developed nations does, but through our vote at the United Nations General Assembly, it carries a significant political power. It gives us power to speak, it gives us power to vote, it gives us power to join together and to insist that the greatest threat to humankind are considered by the highest decision-making bodies in the world. And this is the context Pacific and CSOs are really backing the efforts of our governments, especially the Vanuatu government and their friends, to encourage other members of the United Nations General Assembly in this 70th session that is as open and running throughout, to vote in favor with the request to the International Court of Justice to clarify the legal obligations of states to protect the human rights and the environments from climate change. And in order to be successful, we really need the simple majority of the vote, a simple majority vote for the United Nations to refer the matter to the ICJ. So this is the efforts for civil society and Pacific governments for almost 3 years now. And now we are at the stage where we are ready to table the resolution and welcome the world to stand on whether to stand on the right side of history or stand in the wrong side of history. And indeed, from all of, not just speaking on a naive sense as a young person involved and a bit biased because I've been in the process for so long, but an advisory opinion on climate change is truly an idea whose time has come. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas Solomon. Thank you so much for that powerful and actionable item. To all our audience, to our panelists, please call on your world leaders to vote on the resolution at the UN General Assembly to vote yes on seeking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, because as Solomon shared, it's not only for those from the Pacific, but it's also for all people around the world, future generations, those that are yet to be born. We have a duty to be able to set the stage for them, as also similar sentiments to what Elder Rosina shared earlier. So now I'd like to invite Mike to play the video from Dr. Fry. Dr. Ian Fry is the UN Special Rapporteur, the newly appointed UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights in the context of climate change. Dr. Fry was on an official visit to Bangladesh, and unfortunately he was not able to join in person as he's currently in transit. Mike, could you please pull up the recording? Mike, it doesn't seem that we can hear Dr. Fry's voice.
Apologies for that. I'm gonna try to do some troubleshooting. Should just take a second.
Sure. While we're waiting for Mike to pull that up, do we have any questions from the audience? Well, we have a question from Michael Buckout. I'm just going to read it out. There are seemingly overly optimistic policies affecting all of your communities. Besides political action, what are the next specific, more accelerated, realistic goals you'd like to see your leaders push that will inspire the youth in your communities? Thank you for that question, Michael. Solomon and Hemafati, I think this question is directed to you. Would either of you like to answer that?
Okay, maybe I'll just go first and then Solomon can, is that okay? Okay, great. Thank you so much for the question. For me, I'd like to prioritize what we call action for climate empowerment that has been recognized under the UNFCCC procedures as well. Because like I mentioned, many a times, 95% of the times why youth are dismissed is because you don't have experience or you don't have knowledge. It's just as simple as that. All the adults dismiss us, most of the adults. So if you want to take real action, you want to inspire more youth to be involved, be a part of the movement, you start with empowering them. That empowerment starts through education itself. I'm not talking about formal education. It does not have to be that. Formal education, most of the times in many countries, happens to be very exclusive, not very inclusive for all people, and not very accessible in nature. So you ensure that you educate youth in as many creative ways as possible, empower them, and that the moment you're educated, you tend to internalize the issues of climate change. Your education leads to what you call actionable awareness, means awareness that actually leads to action. And once that action, when you have that kind of actionable awareness, you tend to internalize the issues of climate change, and you understand that climate change impacts you. So once you have that in somebody, when somebody feels that, they have a higher tendency to take climate action itself. So I think it'll all come down to something as simple as educating and empowering young people. And this has been recognized in the UNFCCC, which is politically accepted. It's called the Action for Climate Empowerment. We also had the Glasgow Work Program as a product of COP26. So we just have to push for, we have the political will, we need creativity, making this political will more inclusive and accessible for young people itself. I think that would just and help as many young people and inspire them and empower them to take higher levels of climate action. I'll pass it on to Solomon.
Thank you, Harpathy. Well, for me, it's really coming back to the issue of finance. For, of course, in the Pacific, since what, 30 years plus, 30 years or 30 years more, we've been calling for more financing around towards Pacific, to finance the needs of the Pacific in terms of addressing climate change, and of course to also meet our NDCs. This has not been met, of course. You have well seen this across multiple times, not just from the Pacific calling out for this, but countries in developed, especially in global South, demanding that governments in the global North to pay up. Still, we have not yet for that. And not just for the financing, you also have the issue of loss and damage as well, which is still being controversial accordingly to governments in the state parties to the UNFCCC. So what that is preventing is that without those financing that leaders are ultimately trying to push for, is that it prevents opportunities to be created as well in the Pacific in particular. So a lot of young people, a lot of unemployment in the Pacific. If young people haven't come out of universities, even universities, going back to their homes, no jobs. But it's a great opportunity as well. If you can enable financing to really, and government can enable financing and of course create grants and micro grants to communities and young people to take on the leadership and pushing forwards a lot of solutions and carrying out a lot of solutions, whether it's on educations or even adaptation. That is still very lacking, because of course we want to do all of these things, but of course we require a little bit of resources. Governments can of course facilitate this with new financing that can help encourage a lot of young people to take action on the ground. And of course, I'm in the Solomon Islands and in the Pacific, and I can see a lot of young people who are very interested to take climate action, but does not have the luxury to have a little bit of resources to kickstart their actions, to help the communities and the people that they really care about in the country, and of course to overall contribute to the fight for climate justice. So we are yet to see the financing, and that has been a bit of a barrier for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hemafathy and Solomon. Education and finance. I think those two asks have been circulating in the ethos for almost decades now. Those are realistic, actionable, tangible asks that not only folks, youth from the Pacific have been asking for, but youth from all over the world, communities from all over the world. So I hope that answers your question, Michael. Mike, are we ready for the video now? I see a question from Andrew, so we'll come to your question, Andrew, right after this. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Well, off everyone. My name is Ian Fry and I'm the Special Rapporteur for the promotion and protection of human rights and climate change. I'm very sorry that I'm not able to be at your meeting today. I'm currently in Bangladesh, attending the end of my first ever country visit. Just to give you a sort of brief overview of what a Special Rapporteur on climate change should do, I have a large sort of defined mandate that was created by the Human Rights Council last year. Essentially, I'm to contribute to the ongoing efforts at all levels to address and fix climate change and to deal with the issues connected with enjoyment of human rights. My position requires me to take a gender responsive, age sensitive, disability inclusive and risk informed approach. I had to report to the UN General Assembly each year and to the Human Rights Council each year. So that means I had to produce 2 reports per year. And the mandate lasts for 3 years. And so I've identified 6 key themes for my work. The first theme will be my report to the UN General Assembly in October this year, so not too long away. And I'll be focusing primarily on the issue of loss and damage, looking at the issue of environmental rights defenders, adaptation and mitigation issues. And this is, I've chosen this topic critically because it leads up to the COP in Egypt. The second issue is a very important issue and it deals with climate change displacement. And I'm particularly interested in looking at what protective measures are given to people who are displaced as a consequence of climate change. And this visit to Bangladesh has certainly brought it home to me. There are millions of people in this country already being displaced as a consequence of climate change. Some people are displaced across international borders, and I heard about circumstances here where that is taking place. And I want to look at the protection of people displaced across international borders. These people are not defined as refugees under the Refugee Convention, and therefore they need to be given proper protection. The next sort of theme of my work is what I call legal issues, and I'll be looking at climate change legislation to see that countries are implementing human rights approaches in their legislation. I'll be certainly looking at climate change litigation and how that's expanding. But particularly, I want to look at the issue of intergenerational justice and see whether there are means to create a legal system for enshrining intergenerational justice into international law. And this will be a critical issue. The fourth issue I'm looking at is corporate accountability and to make sure that corporations are responsible for the impacts, the human rights impacts that they're creating as a consequence of their greenhouse gas emissions. And this sort of brings in the issue of reporting, disclosure, those sorts of issues I'll be looking at closely. The fifth issue is relating to just transition. So this is looking at people who may be working in the fossil fuel industry who should not be left behind if there is a transition to green technologies. And so I'll be looking at that issue to ensure that we do give protective measures to people who are maybe now in the fossil fuel industry, but may be left behind if countries move to more greener technologies. The final issue is I'm looking at the human rights implications of what's called new technologies. Sometimes these are called geoengineering. So these are things like cloud brightening as a technology to reduce the global temperature. Clearly, those sorts of technologies can have significant human rights implications. And there's a debate around whether if we don't reach 1.5 degrees Celsius as a stabilization level and have an overshoot of temperatures, whether these technologies will need to be deployed and what are the impacts around these technologies. So my mandate involves country visits and I attend conferences and things like that. With respect to the role, my work connects with community leaders. This is a critical area. Clearly, community leaders are the people on the ground who are experiencing the impacts of climate change and the impacts on human rights. And therefore, making a connection with community leaders is a critical part of my work. One of the things that I can do is write letters of complaint. So if you write to my office, you have an issue that is a concern to you, I can write a letter of complaint, and I've done a few of those already, and participated with other special rapporteurs on some other issues around complaint letters. My work has many challenges, of course. It's a very large area to cover, it's just the critical problem is to get the big polluters, both governments and corporations, to realise their responsibility for the huge loss and damage that they are causing to the lives of many people. This is the whole issue of polluter pays principle, and we have to make sure that these people are accountable. So with every court case, every legal challenge that's made against these polluters will make this work more possible. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all the best in your side event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fry. Thank you, Mike, for pulling that up. Dr. Fry mentioned a lot of things about his mandate, about the themes that he is covering, and an invitation to use him in ways that his mandate allows him to be able to bring justice and help communities seek remedy. So I'll now go back to the Q&A just because we've opened up. We have 2 questions and then go back to the panelists to both reflect on this, but also Dr. Fry's message. This first question is from Andrew Fuse. Hi, Andrew. Andrew's question and comment: thanks to all for excellent presentations. Are there any examples of local government responses to climate forced displacement that panelists would consider a promising step or even potential good practice? Elder Rosina, Chief Sherelle, Solomon, and Hamafathy, may I invite 1 or 2 of you to answer?
Well, for me, I would say no. We have one example that I can refer to here in Louisiana, where a tribal community had come to the very difficult decision of leaving their homeland and relocating and, gathering their people together in another location. And according to all of the information that I have heard and have been given by the tribal leadership, that whole process was hijacked and usurped by the government, and the control of the project was taken out of their hands, and what has been installed in lieu of the tribal vision that they had outlined in in their ask for resources to make the relocation possible is just a caricature of what it could have been. So for me, in our area, there are no positive examples to point to, and that's unfortunate because being the first to come to that difficult decision, we were looking, we were all looking to see how that would play out, because unless some drastic changes happen along the coast here in Louisiana, other communities will be facing the negative impacts from climate, induced changes. And we see that process, in our estimation, as a failure. And it's because, the vision of the people were not adhered to, the leadership was taken away from, the tribes, and, we lament that loss to them, but we are hopeful that the future, will still recognize their vision, and they will find the resources and the energies to put their people together again.
Thank you, Elder Rosina. And just to kind of add to that, we also witnessed what took place with that resettlement. And my community is a neighboring community to that tribe. So we watched very closely as to what would happen. And the community's vision was quite beautiful, very innovative, right? Carrying their future generations into a place of health and love and progress, right? But their entire vision was ripped apart, and the government took control. So nothing happened in the way that it should have, in the way that it was proposed to happen. So with our community facing that very same reality, we are not currently uprooting ourselves to move, but we know that that will very soon likely be our reality. So if we wish to maintain our community, our identity, our culture, we will have to move together. However, we will not entrust anyone with that duty, and instead are looking to do these things completely ourselves without involving any government to quote unquote assist us with that, because we've witnessed what happened the first time, and that cannot happen again.
Thank you so much, Chief Sherelle and Elder Rosina. Our second question is from Arthur Dahl. Governments have failed to meet their promised 100 billion annual finance for climate change. Would it be better to turn to multinational corporations making super profits from fossil fuels and other environmental exploitation and require them to contribute 100 billion a year to compensate for the damage they are causing? Solomon, I'd like to direct this question to you before you leave.
Yes. Can you please repeat the question? It caught me off guard.
Sure. Arthur Dahl is stating that governments have failed to meet their proposed 100 billion annual finance for climate change. He is asking, I'm sorry, Arthur, I'm using he, would it be better to turn to multinational corporations making super profits from fossil fuels and other environmental exploitation and require them to contribute 100 billion a year to compensate for the damages they are causing?
That would be ideal, but in legal cases, there will be often roadblocks in the judicial systems, because if you want to take cases against them on the case of climate change, you would have to go through the test that you have to prove is the attribution test. How can you say that a corporation burning fossil fuel is responsible for cyclone in Fiji or cyclone in Africa, or droughts in Africa, or other places around the world? That attribution is very difficult to prove. So in that case, often you would have cases thrown out of the court because of lack of evidence. And another thing is the money. Like, you as a community of people, or even a state trying to go against billion-dollar corporations, they will throw everything they have to go against you. And of course, countries and even individuals or communities do not have that kind of money to go against these nations. They can try, but it is quite difficult. So this is what one particular approach that we're trying to do is, why don't we get more reinforcement from especially the International Court of Justice to clarify the laws around this, so we can have additional firepower. So when we come to the court, we might argue on the attribution angle, or we can argue on the human rights angle to say that, look, whatever the actions you're causing, we acknowledge that it is causing climate change impacts. So governments have a responsibility to ensure that the human rights are protected, and these kind of activities that corporations or other harmful industries are doing are going against public interest, and not only public interest domestically, but public interest globally as well. So these are some angles that we're trying to take to addressing climate change. And of course, they can either stop or ask companies to do more to recover, but that is a future that only can be told through after we seek an advisory opinion on climate change, hoping that can be a new, fresh inclusion, fresh development around or fresh energy into the ongoing battle for climate justice throughout the world. Sorry, but that's the best answer I can give for your very, very important question. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Solomon. Folks, it's 11:30, which is at the time that we need to conclude our gathering. To all our esteemed leaders, you inspire us with your energy, with your wisdom and your knowledge, and we send you power and energy back to continue the important work that you are doing. To all our audience members, thank you so much. A recording will be shared momentarily, and we thank you again for joining. Elder Rosina, last word is yours. No, okay, that was a faulty hand.
Yes, it was. I was looking for something else. And I'm sorry. Yes, okay, so I'm sorry, that was just a faulty hand. Yes.
No, thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.